Sir,
I recognize that the public property in Koochiching, St. Louis, Lake and Cook counties is a very high percentage. And both in terms of, I remember being on the land exchange board when I was state auditor, Governor Carlson made a point to the federal government that he would not approve of any other land exchanges unless the federal payments, the bill was increased, and the same issue is there with the state as well. I mean, in terms of anything additional, then that absolutely is, needs to be a requirement. That now, in terms of what's already owned, I'm not familiar with this particular piece of property you're talking about, sir. But in terms of property that's already owned by, in this case, the state, or some of it's, by the University of Minnesota, the school fund, then their procedures I'd have to look at again in terms of any disposition of that land. It's not the governor's authority to go out and decide to sell land.
can I come back with a question?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
When we elect officials and individuals who come to see us and say, I would like to do this for you, we don't expect you to change things that cannot be changed. That's unrealistic. But a piece of property that is not utilized, that should be utilized, is a travesty for this reason. You just mentioned a little while ago the state having trouble with financial problems. You sell that property, you get the money. You have timber on that property. Timber cruising. You get the money. State of Minnesota. All I want is the land. Why? Because there are going to be more people in Ely, Minnesota. They need places to live. And you know what? I want them to build castles. Why? Because they can afford. They're probably the only people in this whole area that can pay taxes. Because they've made money in Minneapolis. We haven't made a lot of money here. I'm from Ely, Minnesota, all my life. I don't have a lot of money. But when we sold property on Burnside Lake, it was bought by an individual who had 4 other properties in 3 other states. They tore the cabin down that I helped my uncle build. They built a $250,000 cabin. It took a year to build. I like that. We sold it to good people. And now we're making money on it. And what happens is this: if you sell more property, do we have any contractors here? Mm-hmm. They're going to be working. We're talking jobs now. And what do? We sold land. That's all we did. We didn't raise any taxes. We didn't get any money from the federal government because we can't depend on them. So when I'm going to stop now, but what I'm looking for is this: an individual who can work with a community in an area, and we help solve our own problems, and you help us, just like you've done in the past.
Mr. Dayton, I gotta leave. I'm at an emergency disaster meeting at I don't know if Mr. Dayton or Mark remembers me at LTV. Remember, you were I don't think you were nominated that time, and you helped us get our pension. And half-hour talk with you. We went back 30 years. Do you remember me now? We went back 30 years when the Democrats lost control. And you said, well, the late Mr. Walshman was there, Mike Hatch was there, Ovestar was there, and I forget who else, Rookavina. And I talked to you on the side, and I think, who was the guy from Chisholm at that time was nominated? For senator.
Gary Johnson?
No, from Chisholm. He was nominated as a Democrat.
Jerry Johnson?
Right. And anyway, and you were sitting on, so you were on the side table and I would sit with you. I don't see how you can forget me. But and you said, well, they won't let me sit over there. And I says, well, don't worry. I says, the steelworkers always pick the wrong guy. He says, the people will vote for you. But I just want to thank you for getting our pensions. And there was 50 guys. I think your aide was, if I remember, I called him Steady. Last name was Daniels?
Jack Danielson.
We call him Steady. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I know Mark's gonna depart pretty soon. I think we have until 1:45.
But I didn't have a sister like that. I'll say.
I haven't had a chance to talk very much lately. I know Bob.
Okay. I wanted to comment on the state park issue that was just brought up. Being Pat and I, we live in Dayton Township. That's where that state park is located. Now, we've heard a lot of doom and gloom about the state park, but as a matter of fact, our township board has already voted to decrease our taxes because of increased revenue we're going to receive because of that state park. Pat likes to go for a walk. She visits with neighbors that come up from Iowa. Instead of snowbirds going south, there are summertime people that come here. They bought a house and they live in Sudan because they like the quality of life up here. And so the state park is kind of a blessing because us poor struggling old retirees on our fixed incomes get our taxes lowered because people had the wisdom to put through a state park, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, Jane.
I have a question since we're talking about tourism and jobs. I'm concerned that I want to reflect a little more on the sulfide mining possibility. If that comes to pass, I would like to know what then is going to happen, in your opinion, to the tourism-related jobs and our tourism industry. How will those positions and businesses be replaced once the traveling public perceives that our boundary waters here in the Ely area is not the pristine wilderness that they had come to expect and want to be in when they travel? So I'm concerned about our tourism jobs.
Well, again, that's part of the environmental impact analysis that has to be made. But you have to be able to assure people living here and people traveling here and people coming here for whatever reasons that this environment is not going to be adversely affected. I mean, that's
but the thing that is troubling is a couple of other people mentioned, and I guess I want to hit it home again. Nowhere in the world has sulfide mining been proved to be safe. So here we are in water-rich northeastern Minnesota with natural resources galore, and we're thinking about putting this in this area.
Well, again, I'm not going to prejudge the process. That would be inappropriate for me to do so. But I'll have good commissioners that I'll, and they'll be involved, and I'll get involved. And this timetable, as I understand, it's got another year and a half just until the EIS is completed. So we've got time to make all of those assessments.
I think, Mark, you can sense there's a bipolar citizen arrangement here in Ely. That's those of us on one side who are very, very concerned and own and operate tourist businesses like Jane and Steve do out on Birch Lake, and there are others, of course, that are trust the impacts or the mining companies to do a good job. Now, whether or not that's possible, we don't know.
But Ronald Reagan said, "Trust but verify." And and that's, environmental protection is about ongoing verification. It's about ongoing vigilant oversight. It's not about trust in the sense of just go on. And we have learned through the issues. I remember going back with Governor Purpich back the mine land reclamation. And going back at the first time I served with him in the 1970s. The consequences even there were the jobs left and the residue and all the impact and the dust and the pits and everything else remains. So all of this needs to take consideration. Again, I don't know of anybody who wants to sacrifice environmental protection for economic development. And people want both when possible, because both are desirable: strong environmental protection and jobs.
I agree totally.
So,
we live 6 miles south of Dunker Pit, which, as you know, has yet to be cleaned up. So we have great concerns for our environment.
One other issue.
November the press said that.
Oh, I had a question. Would we be able to find your plans and positions regarding developing green jobs on the Iron Range and in northeastern Minnesota at your website?
Well, in general, yes, in general, and one of the cornerstones really is what I call the Energy Savings Revolving Loan Fund, where it's modeled after what they've done at the University of Minnesota Morris, where they retrofitted the buildings for more efficient energy use. Well, that puts people to work in the building trades. They retrofitted the heating and cooling system to use alternative energy, That's again job creating. In this case, the alternative fuel is they're buying corn stalks from local farmers, pelletizing them, putting them in a gasifier, and they estimate once it's fully operational, they'll save taxpayers $1 million a year in lower energy costs. So that's the prototype for starting with the state college and university buildings. And then those projects, when they're successful, the energy savings pays for the initial investment in 5 to 7 years, I'm told. And that money can be reinvested then in the school districts, buildings, state and local government buildings, and I believe in a decade we could transform the energy use by the public sector in Minnesota and shift our energy sources to clean energy. And I was up, well, I guess down actually, in Wawabak a couple weeks ago for a groundbreaking there for a solar energy panel business. There's one I visited yesterday in the metropolitan area that's also manufactures solar panels. So again, you were talking, Steve, about the tax, the incentives, that the state provides. I mean, there are ways we can incentivize both those companies and also others, businesses and homeowners, and in installing them, using them, and really encourage that industry to be locating in Minnesota. If we say we have a 10-year or 20-year sustained commitment in Minnesota, then it's going to be much more advantageous for those companies to locate here and save their transportation costs, and that seems to be what we want to encourage from a job standpoint. So that's that part of that is on the website in the jobs plan, and that's really the cornerstone, is to see what we can do in a proactive way.
Wind power?
Absolutely. As the steelworkers tell me,
we could have powered the Twin Cities the last couple of days right here.
Yeah.
Drive up 53 and on the ridge there, Mintac, you see those giant windmills, and as the steelworkers say, each one of those uses 800 tons of steel. So rather than importing it from, I believe they're Finland or California, but they're outside of Minnesota, I mean, if they could be made here, manufactured here using Minnesota steel, I mean, that origin steel, and how much better would that be again for our economy? So yes, absolutely, that's the goal.
Maybe one more question. I know somebody hasn't asked one already. Mark, Steve, go ahead.
Well, then we'll give the mayor the last word.
Yeah, okay, we give the mayor the last word.
Two questions to one question. If you are elected governor and you are faced with the decision that Pawlenty administration has in the past, and this has to do with copper nickel again, there is the issue to prove it safe before it is mined. Are you going to insist on
what?
Prove it first that it can be done, or are you going to, would you go along with financial assurances that the mining companies will put money up front to guarantee to clean up our environment if and when there's going to be damage? And secondly, as governor...
Can I answer that one first while I remember it?
Sure.
It's both. I mean, it's both safe before anything could proceed, and since, I mean, since the life of the mines, again, what I'm told so far, and I've got a lot more to learn, is 20 to 30 years, there will be a point in the future at which time, even if everything were to go well, where the project would be, the use of it would be completed, as we've seen with other mines in northeastern Minnesota. So that even if it was proven safe and before it proceeded, and also it would need a financial assurance or a fund that would provide for that time when it eventually occurred.
Okay, secondly, a challenge to you, if you are elected, and to prove it first, and to prove that this type of mining can be done, it would be beneficial for you and the EPA and your organization, the DNR, to take the time to fund uncapping the 1,000-foot hole that was dug in the 60s. It went down 1,000 feet, 10 by 10. They sampled minerals, copper, nickel. That hole now is probably full of a lot of water, and then all that water is leaching into the Wishway River and the watershed into the boundary waters. So there would be an opportunity for you to stand up for what you believe, clean water, and test that water, and to see if it is pure or if it's tainted by sulfuric acid.